Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoGive podcast. I'm your host, Ben Wright. I'm really excited to have on Eric Lindroos of Gong today. Eric, thanks for coming on, man.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So I love to start off this kind of podcast by just, giving people a chance to introduce themselves, tell people who you are and who you work for and kind of what your role is at Gong.
Perfect. Again, thank you for having me. So my name is Eric Lindroos. I've been at Gong for just over 3 years now. My backstory, I was actually in education for 5 years and I loved being a teacher. But in San Francisco, I was so poor. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I literally was like, okay, I'm going to give myself a 3-year plan. I'm going to break into sales and then I'm going to reevaluate how happy I am or go back to teaching. So I got into sales. I was an SDR at my last company. I was then in sales leadership. I was then in sales enablement. Gong calls me. They're like, hey, do you want to be an SDR again? And I was like, what did you say? No, I don't want to be an SDR again. Like I've already done that. Like it was hard. I climbed the ladder. Long story short, it was the most amazing conversation I'd ever had. Joined Gong 3 years ago as an SDR. I was then on the people team as a recruiter. And I've now since moved into the enablement team. I was the SDR enablement manager. And as of a week ago, I actually received a promotion and I'm now sales enablement manager, global onboarding. So
Congrats.
That's a little bit of my story. Thank you. Loving it. Yeah.
And from your LinkedIn post, I hear that you're going maybe somewhere a little bit farther overseas, right?
Yeah, going to go over to the ponds. We are opening up an office in Dublin, Ireland in October. And so I will be relocating to Dublin with a few other Gongsters. And then obviously we're hiring in Dublin as well currently.
That's pretty cool, man. I have to admit, I'm slightly jealous. Dublin's a cool place, but also like kind of expensive as well. But I mean, being from San Francisco, you're probably used to that by now, right?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the adventure, to say the least.
Oh, well, that's a great introduction, man. So I think like this podcast and the people I speak to, it's mainly focused on companies that have really good kind of social causes attached to them, right? And companies that really promote either corporate social responsibility or have a focus on social impact. And I saw a post from you about Proud Gongsters, right? And about that kind of group that you have going at Gong, and thought it would be a great time with it being Pride Month last month. Apologies that I'm a little bit late by a few days here, but thought it would be a great opportunity to have you on to kind of talk through some of the cool things Gong are doing in that area. So would love for you just to introduce what Proud Gongsters is all about and kind of how you came to be involved in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you. I don't think it's ever too late to have a conversation around what your company is doing to help promote just goodness, right? Visibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you again for having me. So Proud Gongsters is our employee resource group. We actually don't say ERG at Gong anymore. We've rebranded ourselves internally to say Gong Circles. For us, we had a conversation with the team, and employee resource group just feels a little buttoned up, right? Yeah. I'm going to go and find some resources, right? And that's phenomenal. That's amazing. Don't get me wrong. But we really wanted like our ERG groups to be a place that you went to really connect, right? And so we say Gong Circles. But yeah, we've always, as long as I've been at Gong, we've been unbelievably inclusive and focused on diversity. But as we became a more mature company, right, from 20 people in a WeWork to now almost 700 people globally, we recognized the need to have a little bit more structure around those diversity initiatives. And so we actually rolled out all of our Gong Circles last year, Proud Gongsters being one of them. And so we have multiple Gong Circles. We have Latinx, we have Women at Gong, we have Asian at Gong, we have the Neighborhood, which is a Gong Circle for Black Gongsters. And then we also have the Proud Gongsters, which I am co-lead of. So Proud Gongsters, our mission is really to just bring together and recognize LGBTQIA+ Gongsters in a positive and non-judgmental environment where they can fully express their individuality, share their lived experiences, and just feel safe in a community that is void of discrimination, prejudice, and inequality. And so really that's like that's the goal of our Proud Gongster. So, every month we have happy hours, every quarter we have different, internal and external events. For us, we're a closed circle right now, meaning you have to live in the identity. However, we constantly have events where we open up those events to our allies to come and help support as well. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about the Proud Gongsters. We have a executive sponsor, Udi Lettergore, who is our chief marketing officer. He's married to a husband, has 3 beautiful babies. And so he and I partner closely together to, again, create those initiatives, both internally and externally for the company.
That's incredible, man. And actually, I did some research kind of prior to the call, and I was amazed to see, the amount of those kind of, you call them circles, right? The circles that you have at Gong. And that was pretty incredible to me. I think organizations are usually quite slow with how they build out those groups. You maybe find one, and then maybe 5 years later, they'll add another. The fact that you have so many speaks a lot to, I think, just how great of a company Gong is, right? Because they really want every employee to feel safe, as you mentioned earlier. You mentioned a couple of things around some of the activities you guys do, like happy hours and stuff like that. I don't know if you could just expand on that. Kind of what format does it take, and how do people get involved at the company?
I think it just depends on what the events are. We have standing happy hours. Proud Gongsters, as of right now, is actually the only Gong Circle as well that also has an international presence. So we have Proud Gongsters in Israel as well. So half of our company is in Israel. The rest of us are in the US. We're building out, EMEA right now. And so we do partner really closely, myself, Udi, with the other co-leads in Israel. So we have standing events monthly and quarterly just for our group. And then when it comes to, a month like June, we had 10 different events that, 6 of them were internal for our Gongsters and our allies, right? And then we actually had 4 events that were external as well, that were open to the public and for other companies to join. We hosted this last month an incredible international coffee and learn panels, is what we call it, where we had all of our Proud Gongsters, walk through the history and share personal stories. And really the goal is obviously to, again, just create a place of safety for people to learn and support and be educated around, issues that happen in our community. And so it really just depends on the events and what we're doing at any given time.
Yeah, and I love the concept of actually opening events out to the public. I think that's actually pretty unique in my experience, in terms of, because I think Pride Month, a lot of companies will put on events that are internal, right? But the fact that you guys took the initiative to do external public-based events, I think is a really cool way. And like you said, having the education piece attached to it, I think is really, really important. So we've kind of just gone over some of the things, or some of the initiatives that Gong is really focused on, and specifically talked about the Proud Gangsters movement. What do you think it does for the company in terms of, Gong employees having these groups, in terms of like a benefit? Like, what are some of the things that you think having these groups kind of set up and with inside Gong, what do you think it does for like employee morale and kind of an employee, I suppose, satisfaction of the job?
Oh, such a good question. So many things to unpack there. Yeah. I mean, through a business lens, right? Retention.
Yep.
Right? First and foremost, right? When people feel like they can show up as their true and authentic self, right? And feel supported and not feel like they have to hide who they are, right? I think that again, there's so much to unpack there, right? That creates a sense of belonging, right? When you think about companies that don't foster that type of space, right, and that atmosphere, imagine the stress that somebody goes through, starting a new job, wondering if they can talk about their husband or their wife or their boyfriend, or a surrogacy journey because they're becoming parents, right? When you have to hide a part of yourself, I think that the mental health component is really impacted. And I think that obviously lends itself to a lot of different things professionally, right? When it comes to work and performance and showing up. Even for example, last year, right, with Black Lives Matter, it was a horrendous experience and event that we witnessed. And, for the neighborhood, the Gong Circle, which represents our Black Gongsters, to know that they didn't have to hide what they were going through, or, the fear of what was happening, or the anger, right? Or whatever it was, right? Knowing that they could come to work every single day and just be themselves. I think that lends to, just really feeling inclusive. I also think through a candidate lens, right? Like, people want to work at companies where they know that DEI initiatives are being supported, right? And so when it comes to attracting talent, and diverse talent, I think that that's something that people look at as well, right? And want to understand, what is a company doing? So I think when it comes down to it, it's retention, it's attracting the right talent, it's ensuring that people feel supported and safe, and that lends to mental, health benefits, and, job performance, and just happiness, retention, right?
I think the point you made at the start actually was a really good one. And if you can't share everything about yourself at work, you're never going to be totally happy, right? And that will impact not only your personal life at work, but also your work. Like, your work performance will suffer negatively as a result. I think the other thing to point out, and people that are listening are probably aware. I mean, anybody that's on LinkedIn are probably aware of Gong because of how good a job you guys do, just in terms of the marketing perspective. But another event that stands out to me, when there were the Asian events in San Francisco, the Asian crimes in terms of some of the assaults that were happening to Asian people in San Francisco, Gong was a consistent voice on not only speaking out against it, but also protecting their employees and showing support publicly as well. I don't know if you have any more information on that, but from my perspective, that was a really powerful thing to see from a professional perspective, a company speaking out in support of Asians in their workforce. I thought that was a fantastic thing to do. So I don't know, is that kind of very apparent throughout the company? Does that happen regardless, those kind of things in terms of speaking out publicly?
100%. Gong, I think what makes Gong so special, and not to digress, but to sort of add to this story, Gong is the first company in my entire professional career where I have not felt gay, right? And when I say that, I mean that in every other professional environment, I've always been cognizant that, like, oh, the gay person, Eric, right? And whether it was through micro or macro aggressions, whether it was through somebody being like, I want you to be my gay BFF. And I'm like, really? Like, can't that just be your BFF? Why do I have to be your gay BFF, right? Like, Gong is the first company ever in my career where I never think I'm gay. I'm just Eric, right? And I think that that's a huge testament to how unapologetic Gong as a company is with supporting DEI and being a vocal voice and having visibility around injustices, right? So 100%, and it always starts top down, right? And so when it comes to anything that's happening, right, like, Gong is the first company, right, to create a stance against what we as a company believe is right or wrong, right? So,
well, that was going to be, I suppose, my follow-up point. It's not just because I think a lot of companies can release like a statement, for example, right, and say, whatever they say in their statements. But to your point, the fact that your leadership, you mentioned Judy earlier, and some of your other senior management, they're the ones that are speaking up very publicly about it. I think that lends not only confidence to employees, but real kind of legitimacy to what they're saying, right?
Oh, 100%. When you have, your CEO, Amit Bendov, making a post during June that says, I am a proud ally, right? Like,
yeah.
It literally tells everybody at that company, this is who we are and this is what we stand for. When you have other executives or colleagues posting, about the injustices that are happening right now in the Asian Pacific community, it literally lets everybody know that they're being supported. When your company, and I can't even tell you how much we've done for different nonprofits or different organizations, and I'm happy to chat a little bit about that. But we've literally donated to so many charities, whether it's for Pride or Black Lives Matters, or to help, with what's happening in the Asia Pacific community. Like, again, you're just constantly being told, and it's being reinforced that you're at a company that really cares, right? Did I ever, Ben, tell you about our Gong for Good and what that is at the company?
No. That was actually going to be one of my kind of agenda items. So I'd love you to expand on that.
So at Gong we have our operating principles, right? We have 8 different operating principles, but for us, I guess it was last year during the Black Lives Matter movement, we recognized that those operating principles weren't enough for us, and we actually came up with 6 additional operating principles through the lens of Gong for Good. And so what Gong for Good is we as a company believe that we can make a difference in our workplace and our communities and just the world, right, in general. And so the different operating principles of Gong for Good, if you will, they're give back is one of them. Help others climb the ladder, right? So what that means is champion and mentor talent from non-traditional backgrounds to access successful career opportunities. We have promote a fairer world. We also, for us, it's not just about like putting up some sort of operating principles that look really pretty on the wall. It's about action for us. And I think you're sort of alluding to that, right? Like you see the action behind who we are as a company and what we care for. So we have leading by example, we have being active, we also have taking a stand. And so as of right now, and this number is growing, we actually have 3 official partnerships externally where Gong provides our platform for free. And we have literally an entire board and a panel that evaluates the different organizations that we want to partner with. And it's quite an extensive process. And so one of them is FlockJ. And FlockJ helps make tech accessible to people from non-traditional backgrounds. And we actually have like a mentorship program with FlockJ. So about 35 Gong employees are mentors to the FlockJ graduates. And again, these are people coming from, diverse backgrounds and typically, non-traditional and minority backgrounds, socioeconomic disadvantaged backgrounds, right? We also have Build On, which is an organization that helps break the cycle of poverty and illiteracy, again, with minorities and people of diverse backgrounds. And then a new one that we just partnered with is actually Israeli-based, since we do have a presence over there. And it's called SOFIN. And they are a joint Arab and Jewish organization promoting high tech in the Arab society as a lever for economic development and the creation of a shared society in Israel. So for us, like, it's not just enough to have our CEO or CMO or CRO or SDR or CSM share an asset on LinkedIn. Like, it's about us actually doing good, right, with Gong.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I think what's interesting about that is not only because I think donating money is fantastic, right? But actually the part that you mentioned there about the mentorship is going to have such a larger impact on the people that are in those roles, right? Specifically because the calorie return at Gong is pretty high, right? Like, having that kind of mentorship program is one that's, I'd imagine, fairly unique in the business world as well, especially in terms of, like, establishing a partnership and then mentoring people. Do you know? Can you expand on that a little bit? Like, are you part of that program? Do you know people that are part of that program? And maybe give the audience a little idea about how that works. I'm sure there's some people listening that think that's a great idea. I'd love to do it at our company, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, the organization is called FlockJ, and I'd have to check the numbers, but I believe there's about 35 of us, maybe more, that are actual mentors, myself included. I am a mentor to 2 of the FlockJ graduates. So with FlockJ, it's more or less a sales boot camp, and they go through a 6-week training course, and then from there they're placed into different SaaS organizations. And from there, FlockJ and Gong are partnered together, and we are partnered with some of those graduates that are in other companies. And so every 2 weeks, I meet with my mentee for half an hour. And I mean, it's honestly like the highlight of my day. We talk about, like, and they're an SDR. Most of them go into an SDR entry level position since it's their first, role in sales. So we literally talk about cold calling, right, and techniques, and email customization, and how to use Drift most effectively, and LinkedIn presence, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's just I think a really impactful relationship, not just for the mentee, but also for the Gong employees as well, right? And I just think I think it's really important to give back, right?
Yeah.
I know I've had mentors, right, in my previous lives, career.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think actually mentors probably represent the most impactful part of my career growing up, like in terms of people being able to tell you a little bit about your role or what to do next. Like for me, that's such an impactful part of your career, having somebody guide you through that process. And I think, you mentioned that they're coming in as an SDR, and who better to learn from, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, one question I love to ask people on here, Eric, is just around like going back to the Proud Gongster movement that you kind of co-chair. Are there any moments that kind of stand out to you that kind of make it all worthwhile, or moments that make you think this is super cool? Like, I'm so glad I'm chair of this, and so glad I get to be a part of this movement.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things about Proud Gongsters and being lucky enough to be a co-lead for Proud Gongsters. I think for me, so every month we have a hiring class, right? And we actually, in our onboarding session, we have a monthly session where our HR team, our people team, we walk through all of the Gong Circles, and we have every single co-lead in that onboarding session of all of our new hires. And we talk about, we share personal stories, we talk about our events, more or less what we're doing here, right? Yep. And every single month, 1 to 2, sometimes 3 people reach out to me and they ask to be added to Proud Gongsters. For us, everything is about confidentiality. When it comes to, Proud Gongsters, everybody's journey is different, right? And for us, having that, again, safety and confidentiality is absolutely crucial. Mm-hmm. And so every month when I have people Slack me and say, oh my gosh, I'm a Proud Gongster, can you add me to, sorry, it makes me a little emotional because day one, sorry, I did not mean to get emotional. Day one, you have people that just feel seen and feel valued, and you're literally day one setting the tone for their professional career and journey at Gong, that you can be exactly who you want to be, and you can show up, and we're going to show up for you, right? And so it just moves me every single month. And obviously, having been in a lot of companies myself where I didn't have these type of resources, I didn't have this type of visibility, right? It literally means so much to me. We actually had somebody who had been at the company, still at the company, but for almost 2 years before reaching out to me and saying, hey, Eric, like, I think I'm at that stage in my journey where I'd like to be a part of the Proud Gongsters. Again, sorry, I get emotional. Like,
these are the cool stories, man. It's kind of what makes it all worth it, right? And why other companies should do things like this. I think this is exactly the kind of stuff I like hearing, for sure.
Like, we've always been that company, though, right? Like, yes, we have an official Gong Circle now with a budget and an executive sponsor, but Gong has always been that company. And so when I think of an employee who's been with us for over 2 years, who has seen the type of company we are and the type of inclusion that we enable, for that person to come out 2 years later and know that they have a safe place that they can be a part of, right? Like, I like literally cried all day on that one, because it was just,
it's amazing, mate. Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, it actually, the point you made is a really important one around it being like day one as well, right? Like, people that have pinged you like their first week at the company, knowing that actually, like, I can just be myself. Like that must be a pretty cool feeling to be part of that, right?
I feel lucky every single month. I feel humbled and lucky that I get to play a small role in the atmosphere that Gong helps to create and facilitate.
And you mentioned your co-chair, Udi, who again is always over LinkedIn, right? He's a fantastic piano player and always comes out with great content. How instrumental has he been in terms of being the executive sponsor of that program?
I don't think you could measure how instrumental he has been when you try to evaluate the impact that a role model can have on somebody's career, right, personally or professionally. I think that's really hard to measure, right? When you see a C-suite that literally has 3 children, has a husband, and says, and Udi says this, right? But this is also our company, right? This is a sort of a core part of our DNA. Udi Ledergor will tell you, we don't do business at all cost. He literally will say that on panels, like, we don't need your business as a company if you're homophobic, if you don't stand for equality and diversity and inclusion. Like, we will literally let go of a deal before we ever stand behind something that doesn't feel true to ourselves. So when you literally hear somebody like Udi on a panel saying that, all you can do is think, oh, yeah. where do I work? Yeah. Where do I work that our C-suite is saying, no, we don't need your business if you're not going to support what we find to be core pillars of just the right thing to do, right?
Those are the kind of stories that, like, give me goosebumps a little bit, just because I think there's an odd thing in tech whereby people have, and you alluded to them earlier, these values, right, which represent their company. And sometimes you look at those values and that company's not living by them, right? Like, like it's very much for either their shareholders or something, just to attract candidates in. And then once the candidates are there, they realize actually that's not the case. Stories like that make you realize that Gong's legit, right? And the principles that you guys have are core to your, not just your culture, but to the success of your company. Would you kind of agree with that?
Oh, 100%. It literally, we live and breathe those operating principles, and the Gong for Good operating principles as well. And again, it's all about action, right? So when you literally see your company, your marketing team, your executive team allocating thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and resources to creating visibility around whatever it is, right? Proud Gongsters for June. I can't even imagine. I mean, we donated $10,000 to 3 different charities, right? We literally had the marketing team create assets for the entire company, right? Like, that's money, that's time, that's action, right? And so 100%, like, it is when you have an optional, global coffee, pride panel, and you have over half of the company show up, right? It tells you that people care. And when you have, 20 other people Slack you and say, sorry, I had to miss, the optional coffee learn. I watched it back in Gong, and oh my gosh, thank you, right? Like, it tells you that it's not just something we say, it's something that we do, right?
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Well, I think I was obviously aware of who Gong was as a company kind of prior to this call, but I think you've only kind of confirmed what I thought, and it's cool to hear, man. And I think it kind of gives you confidence in companies, specifically ones like Gong that are so successful. And congratulations on the latest round of funding, obviously. But to see that culture not shift based on success is really cool as well, right? So let me ask you the question. You said the Proud Gongsters is not just based in the US, but also I think you said in Israel as well. Is the plan to then obviously roll that out in Dublin and in EMEA as well?
100%. Right now with the Gong Circles, with the ERG groups, typically they are employee led and run. And so we only have 2. Yeah. We have 2 employees right now in EMEA. Okay. But come October, right, when I go over to EMEA, I will continue to maintain, my position as co-lead for the EMEA office. I also think, it's for us, at least at Gong, every year somebody else has the opportunity to step into the role as well. And so this is something that we strongly advocate for anybody in the company to step into. So if there were somebody in EMEA, or if there were somebody here, in the US, I would absolutely step aside and support somebody else in the vision, whatever that looks like, that they want to bring to the Proud Gongster group.
That's cool, man. And I have one final question. I know you're a busy man, so I'll make this be my last question. And we've kind of touched on a few of them. So I think it's going to be a relatively easy one to ask. But I always ask this question, last question to guests around why should social impact and corporate social responsibility be a thing? Like, what advice would you give to companies that don't have any kind of social causes they support, or don't have, as you do, the employee resources group or Gong Circles that support staff? One, why do you think it's so critical? And secondly, any words for companies that don't have those kind of things kind of set up internally currently?
I mean, I think it's so critical for everything we've discussed, right? For that employee that is on their own journey, right? This is through the Gong lens of Proud Gongsters, but for that employee that's on their journey for 2 years and they don't know if it's safe for them to come out. And so instead of coming out, they just leave the company, right? Because they don't have visibility as to how supported they will be in being their authentic self. So retention right there, right? I can't tell you how many calls I have. I'm no longer on the people team. I'm on the enablement team, as I shared, but I still jump on anywhere from 3 to 5 calls a month for the people team to talk to a candidate about these efforts, right? The DEI efforts and what it has been for me and what our goals are and our initiatives, right? So when you have candidates that are saying, hey, Gong, or hey, X company, can you put me in touch with somebody so that I can learn more about this? Like those are all factors that people, look at when deciding where to accept their next position, right? So again, attracting the talent, achieving revenue targets, mental health is, especially in this remote environment, especially last year, during the pandemic, like mental health is crucial. So when you have something, again, like what's happening to the Asian community or the Black community, when you have those horrendous injustices taking place, but your employees know that they can just be honest with their manager or their HR team or their colleagues and say, hey, I'm having a really tough time, right? Like those are the things that literally make people show up rather than show out. And I have to shout out Matt Biggerstaff. He's an ally of Proud Gongsters. He's also an ally of the neighborhood. He's an ally of our Asian ERG as well. And every 2 weeks, he organizes with Devin Kirschman is her name. They organize a virtual 5K run, and every 2 weeks they pick a different organization to donate all the proceeds to, right? So when you see in your Slack channel, right, that people are like, hey, let's do another 5K run, and it's on a regular schedule, and then it's some of the charities that have been donated to are the Asian Pacific Fund, the Outright Action International, the Equal Justice Initiative. Like when you see your allies, right, that aren't the executives, creating these type of initiatives to support and showcase allyship, like how do you not just like,
yeah.
How do you not say, oh my gosh, like where I work and equally important, like how can I participate? How can I donate, right? So yeah, I think if you're a company that isn't in some capacity creating this conversation, I think you're really missing out on a really big opportunity, right? And for yourself as well. Ryan Longfield, he's our CRO. He's actually an ally to the Black community, but he's actually the executive sponsor for the neighborhood. When you become like more of a larger company, right, you have the executive sponsorship. So he's actually the executive sponsor, and he will tell you that what that relationship and that sponsorship has done for himself, right, in educating himself and understanding other people's experiences, right? Like he says it's literally changed him, right? And so again, I don't think you have to be super fancy and have like a budget set aside and executive sponsorships. And I don't think you need to allocate thousands of dollars from your marketing team, for resources and LinkedIn collateral. I think it's literally changing your company banner to support pride, right? How easy is that, right? And even that shows people, hey, you can be here. I think it's as simple as adding your pronouns to your Slack profile or your LinkedIn profile, literally adding your pronouns, he, him, whatever it is, she, her, they, theirs. It literally tells people internally and externally, hey, like, I care about how you want to be identified. So let me make sure that you feel comfortable, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think there's so many little things that a company can do that will showcase who they are and what they care about. Right?
Yeah.
So
no, I think that's great. I love it, man. I think that's fantastic advice. Well, Eric, like I said, thanks so much for coming on, man. This has been fantastic. I think it's done a couple of things for me. Like I said, one, it's always good to know how companies are approaching critical issues, and I think you've really outlined how Gong are approaching those issues. But I think you've also probably convinced everybody that listens to this to join Gong. So you're probably gonna have to put in some calls to the people team after this, because I think you've kind of sold the vision so well. Just from, I think everybody knows what a great product Gong has, right, in the market, but I think people are starting to know how great of a company it is from a culture perspective. So I appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing that with us. I think it's been really cool.
100%. Again, thank you for having me. And full transparency, my goal in this conversation with you wasn't to recruit anybody. Right? If you want to come work at Gong, amazing. But my goal, right, if there's a takeaway from this conversation, it's these conversations matter. And these conversations will make or break if somebody feels safe in your company. These conversations make or break whether somebody decides to join your company. Like, it is imperative. It's just the right thing to do. It's what our executive team always says. Like, it's just the right thing to do. So, takeaway is not to apply to Gong. Takeaway is to have a conversation at your company. A takeaway is to ask yourself, how can we create more diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So that everybody feels safe to be whoever they are, right? That's the takeaway. I
love it, man. No, I love it. Well, Eric, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much, man. And just give, I suppose, is there any other place that people can go to check out Proud Gongsters? Is there a website, part of the website that people can go to?
Yeah, you can go to our gong.io. Forgive me, I don't know the forward slash to it, but there is it's under, I think, the careers page or the more about Gong, but we actually list all of our Gong Circles, so you can find out more about, again, our DEI efforts. And then honestly, I would just follow, if you're not already following Gong's LinkedIn page, like, literally follow our page. Everything that we're doing literally comes from our marketing team as well. So, you know, when we highlight different events or we open up events to, you know, external people, companies, allies, you know, members of said community, that's a great way to also just stay on top of whatever the company is doing. Connect with Amit Bendov. You'll see his posts. So,
and I'll make sure that I link that careers page just in the notes for this podcast so people can go and check it out. But Eric, thanks so much, man, and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
Bye.